My scissors have cut more than hair. They've carved out a life, a legacy. For 50 years, the gilded shear has been my sanctuary. But when my own nephew tried to bulldoze it all for profit, reducing my life to a line on a spreadsheet, he underestimated the quiet power of a woman who knows a thing or two about sharp edges. My scissors have a language of their own. For nearly 50 years, here in the gilded shear, they have spoken in soft, rhythmic snips, a dialect of trust and tradition understood by everyone who has sat in this chair. The shop itself is a conversation with the past. It's the legacy my late husband, Jean-Luc, and I built from nothing but a shared dream and 2 pairs of shears. He's been gone 10 years, but his presence lingers in the scent of bay rum and the warm gleam of the polished wood stations. The walls are our community's scrapbook. Faded photographs capture the history of our little corner of the world. A boy's first haircut, his cowlick stubbornly resisting my comb. A nervous teenager getting a sharp trim before her senior prom. A young man, his face a mixture of terror and joy, getting a cleanup for his wedding day. I've held their stories in my hands, trimming away the old and shaping the new. This place isn't just a business. It's a repository of memories, a sanctuary where time slows down and people feel seen. The worn leather of the Belmont chair has cradled generations, its gentle creak a familiar comfort. But recently, a new sound has begun to intrude on this comfortable quiet. It's the sound of my phone ringing, and on the other end is my nephew, Pierre. He is Jean-Luc's sister's boy, a child I once bounced on my knee, slipping him lollipops when his mother wasn't looking. Now, he's a man who owns a chain of soulless, hyper-modern salons called Clips. They are the antithesis of everything the gilded shear stands for. Bright, sterile, and impersonal, designed for speed, not connection. His calls have become more frequent. He cloaks his words in concern, asking if I'm getting tired, if the shop is becoming too much for me. He talks about my golden years and the importance of slowing down. But beneath the syrupy veneer of affection, I hear the cold, calculating hum of a businessman. An unsettling shadow has begun to fall over my sunlit little shop. A chill that has nothing to do with the weather and everything to do with the ambition in my nephew's voice. His concern doesn't feel like family, it feels like a strategy. Pierre's concern soon metastasized into a campaign. The phone calls were followed by unannounced visits, each one a little more insistent than the last. He would stride into the shop, his expensive suit a stark contrast to the comfortable, lived-in atmosphere of the gilded shear. He'd bring pastries I couldn't eat and compliments that felt like critiques. "Aunt Vivian, this place is charming, truly," he'd say, his eyes scanning the original tin ceiling and the lovingly maintained Belmont chairs. But charm doesn't pay the bills in the 21st century. He painted a picture of my future, a future he had designed for me. He wanted to acquire the gilded shear, gut it, and transform it into the newest location for his Clips empire. He spoke of a generous buyout, a sum of money that would allow me to finally relax and enjoy a proper retirement. He used words like synergy, brand alignment, and maximizing footprint. To him, my shop wasn't a legacy. It was real estate. "Think of it, Aunt Vivian," he'd press, leaning against a countertop that had supported the elbows of half the town. "No more sweeping up hair, no more worrying about inventory. We'll put in sleek, modern stations, bright LED lighting, a digital booking system. It will be efficient." His vision was a nightmare of chrome and plastic, a place where the unique stories of my clients would be replaced by the monotonous hum of standardized procedures. Each time I refused. I tried to explain, calmly and patiently, that the shop was more than just a business to me. It was my life's work, my connection to Jean-Luc, my purpose. He would just shake his head with a patronizing smile, as if I were a child clinging to a worn-out toy. "You're being sentimental," he'd say. "Business is about moving forward, not looking back." The conversations left me feeling drained, a deep ache settling in my chest. I would look at this man, with his slicked-back hair and his cold, appraising eyes, and struggle to see the little boy I had loved so dearly. The boy who cried when he scraped his knee, whom I'd comforted with a story and a fresh-baked cookie. That boy had understood the value of kindness. This man, my nephew, seemed to have traded it all for a spreadsheet and a bottom line. The love I held for the memory of that child was now at war with the profound disappointment I felt for the man who stood before me. The breaking point arrived on a Tuesday afternoon, a day usually marked by the quiet hum of the blow dryer and the gentle scent of Mrs. Gable's setting lotion. She was in the chair, her silver hair in rollers, while Mr. Henderson waited, patiently reading a newspaper. The bell above the door didn't just jingle, it slammed open, announcing an invasion. Pierre strode in, not alone. He was followed by a younger man in a tight-fitting black turtleneck, holding a sleek tablet and a laser measuring tape. Pierre didn't greet me or my customers. He simply clapped his hands together, a sharp, proprietary sound that made Mrs. Gable jump. "All right, Marco," he said to the designer. "This is it. The canvas." He completely ignored my presence, my very existence. He began to walk the floor as if he already owned it, his voice booming with plans. "We'll knock out this whole back wall, open up the space. All this old wood, gone, we'll do white laminate. And these stations," he gestured dismissively at the polished oak counters Jean-Luc and I had installed ourselves, "will be replaced with our standard clips units. Uniformity is key for the brand." The designer, Marco, raised his laser tape, and a red dot danced across a framed photo of my husband and me on the day we opened the shop. A wave of heat washed over my face. I could feel Mrs. Gable's and Mr. Henderson's eyes on me, their discomfort a thick, palpable thing in the air. Mr. Henderson cleared his throat, a low rumble of disapproval. Pierre finally turned to me, his smile a mask of feigned patience. He pulled a sheaf of papers from his leather briefcase and slapped it down on the counter next to my sterilizing jar. It was a contract, thick and intimidating. "Aunt Vivian, let's stop being difficult," he said, his voice loud enough for everyone to hear. "I've been more than fair. This is for your own good, to secure your future. You just need to sign here." He tapped a manicured finger on the signature line. In that single, condescending tap, 50 years of my life were reduced to an inconvenience. My love, my labor, my community, all of it was just an old-fashioned obstacle in the path of his ambition. He didn't see a person, he saw a problem to be managed. The last fragile thread of affection I held for the boy he once was snapped. It didn't just fray, it disintegrated into dust. The warmth wasn't just sucked out of the room. It was extinguished from my heart, replaced by a cold, hard clarity. This wasn't family. This was a hostile takeover. After Mrs. Gable and Mr. Henderson left, offering quiet words of support and casting disgusted looks toward the door Pierre had slammed, a profound silence fell upon the gilded sheer. It was a silence I had never experienced before. For the first time in nearly 50 years, I walked to the door in the middle of the afternoon, flipped the sign to closed, and locked it. The click of the bolt echoed in the empty room like a final judgment. I sank into the very chair Mrs. Gable had just vacated. The tears I had held back finally came, silent and hot, tracing paths through the light dusting of face powder on my cheeks. They weren't just tears of humiliation, but of a deep, shattering grief for a family connection I now realized was a complete illusion. He hadn't just insulted my life's work. He had tried to erase it, and me along with it. As I sat there, surrounded by the ghosts of 1,000 happy memories, a new feeling began to crystallize beneath the pain. It was a cold, hard resolve. I had been pushed, and now I would push back. My mind raced, searching for a lifeline. And then a name surfaced from the deep well of my memory, Isabella Ramirez. I remembered her as a teenager with a wild mane of dark hair, coming in for her first professional styling before a debate tournament. I had calmed her nerves, telling her she looked like a future leader. Over the years, I'd given her trims before law school interviews and a sophisticated cut when she made partner at her firm. She was one of my girls. My hand trembled slightly as I looked up the number for her firm. It took all my courage to dial, to admit I needed help. But the voice that answered was just as warm and sharp as I remembered. "Vivian, is everything all right?" The next morning, I sat not in a barber's chair, but in a plush leather armchair opposite a large mahogany desk. Isabella, Miss Ramirez now, though she insisted I call her Isabella, listened without interruption as I recounted the entire story, my voice steady despite the tremor in my heart. Her expression shifted from compassionate concern to a focused, professional anger. When I finished, she leaned forward, her eyes locking with mine. "First, Vivian," she said, her voice firm and clear, "what you are feeling is completely justified. This isn't just a family disagreement. This is emotional coercion and a predatory business tactic." She paused, letting the words sink in. "He sees an old building and a woman he thinks he can intimidate. He doesn't see your real asset. You are not alone in this. Your power, Vivian, isn't in a deed or a bank account. It's in the 50 years you have poured into this community. And believe me, that power is far greater than he could ever imagine." The air in Isabella's office, which had felt so intimidating at first, now felt like a command center. A sense of purpose began to replace the despair that had been my constant companion. "He thinks this is a business transaction," Isabella continued, her fingers steepling. "So we'll respond, but not on his terms. A legal battle over the property could be long and costly. Our battlefield is public opinion. Our army is your clientele." The plan that unfolded was simple in its brilliance. It wasn't about fighting Pierre's contract. It was about making his entire venture socially and commercially toxic. Isabella's role was to provide the legal framework. She drafted a formal petition, its language precise and powerful, citing the shop's status as an informal cultural landmark and a vital hub for the community's social fabric. It was a document designed not just for a legal fight, but for a moral one. My part was the heart of the operation. I was the general, and my weapon was conversation. Isabella advised me against any overt displays of anger or victimhood. "Just tell your story, Vivian," she said. "The same way you've always done, one person at a time." And so I did. The next day, the Gilded Shear was open as usual. When Mr. Henderson came in for his rescheduled trim, I told him about the plan. His face, usually placid, hardened with resolve. "Give me that petition, Vivian. I'll take it to the VFW hall tonight." When Maria, the young owner of the bakery next door, stopped in with a coffee, I shared the story. She took a stack of petition forms without hesitation. "I'll put these by the register. My customers love you. They'll be furious." It was a quiet rebellion, fought over the snip of scissors and the hum of clippers. I spoke with the retired history teacher, who immediately began framing the issue as a matter of historic preservation. I talked to the fire captain, who remembered me giving him a free haircut after his house was damaged in a storm. I shared it with the new mothers, the young professionals, the old-timers. I didn't have to ask for their loyalty. I had earned it over decades of listening, of caring, of being there. The invisible power Isabella spoke of was becoming visible, one signature at a time. The response was a tidal wave, a quiet, grassroots tsunami of ink and conviction. The single petition book Isabella had printed became 5, then 10, passed from hand to hand in the bakery, the VFW hall, the local library, and the high school faculty lounge. It wasn't just my older clientele. Teenagers who I'd only ever seen glued to their phones came in, asking, "Is this where we signed to save the cool old barber shop?" Young tech workers from the new co-working space down the street, men with precisely sculpted beards I had never touched, came in to add their digital signatures via QR code Maria had created. The support crossed every generational and social line, bound by a shared sense of place. Isabella, ever the strategist, knew this momentum was the real story. She made a single phone call to a contact at the local news station. The journalist, a sharp woman named Sarah Jenkins, didn't just know of the Gilded Shear. She had gotten her childhood bangs trimmed there, a memory she shared with a laugh. Isabella framed it perfectly. "It's not just a property dispute, Sarah. It's a fight for the soul of a neighborhood." David versus a corporate Goliath with a bad haircut. They arrived 2 days later. The news crew moved with a respectful quiet that was the polar opposite of Pierre's chaotic invasion. They treated the old chairs like museum pieces. As they set up, I felt a tremor of nerves, but as I sat down in my own barber chair, facing Sarah, the fear subsided. I wasn't an old woman being bullied. I was the keeper of a legacy, and it was my duty to speak for it. Sarah's questions were gentle. "Vivian, tell us about this place." So I did. I spoke of Jean-Luc, his hands stained with wood varnish from building the first station because we couldn't afford a carpenter. I opened the old, worn photo albums, their pages soft with age, and let the faces tell the story. "This is David," I said, my finger tracing the outline of a gap-toothed boy. He was terrified of the clippers. I told him they were just big, friendly fireflies buzzing. He's the town fire captain now. Last year, when the bakery had that electrical fire, he was the first one through the smoke, and he came to check on me afterward, his face smudged with soot. I pointed to another photo, a nervous girl with big glasses. "That's Judge Miller's daughter, before her first mock trial competition. Now, she brings her own daughter here." My voice grew stronger as I spoke, fueled by a righteous certainty. I looked directly into the camera, not seeing a lens, but seeing the faces of my community. My nephew talks about efficiency and brand alignment. He sees old chairs and outdated plumbing. He doesn't see the generations of hands I've held, or the thousands of stories these walls have absorbed. A haircut here is never just a haircut. It's a moment of transformation, of preparation, of quiet dignity. Some things are more valuable than a balance sheet. This community's memory is one of them. He wants to tear down a tapestry and replace it with a plastic billboard. The segment aired that night on the 6 o'clock news. It was the final, devastating shot in our quiet war. My soft-spoken narrative, interwoven with shots of the petition signatures overflowing their binders and heartfelt testimonials from my customers, was infinitely more powerful than any legal threat. It transformed a private dispute into a public cause, a clear moral choice for the whole town to see. The fallout was immediate and catastrophic for Pierre. The news segment went viral in our regional social media circles. The narrative was irresistible. The greedy, corporate nephew trying to bulldoze his sweet old aunt's beloved community landmark. People started calling his clips salons, not to book appointments, but to cancel them and to voice their disgust. The comments on his company's Facebook page were a torrent of outrage. He was no longer a savvy businessman. He was a villain from a feel-good movie, and the public was relishing its role as the angry mob with pitchforks. His brand, built on an image of sleek modernity, was suddenly tainted with the stench of old-fashioned cruelty. "Clips will even fire your grandma," one popular meme read. His carefully constructed empire was being threatened not by a competitor, but by the quiet dignity of a 72-year-old woman with a pair of scissors. 2 days after the broadcast, I received a text message from him. It was a long, rambling paragraph filled with excuses and justifications. He claimed it was all a misunderstanding, that he had only ever wanted what was best for me, and that the media had twisted his intentions. The apology, when it finally appeared at the end of the text, was weak and self-serving. I read the message once, my face impassive. There was no anger left, no sadness. There was only a quiet finality. I held my finger over the screen for a moment, then pressed delete. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. My silence was the answer. It was the sound of a door closing forever, locking him out of my life and my heart. With that simple, digital act, the old order was dead. I was no longer the accommodating aunt, the family doormat. I was Vivienne Dubois, owner of the Gilded Shear, and my future was my own. In the weeks that followed, the Gilded Shear became more than just a barbershop. It became a symbol of defiance and community spirit. The bell on the door jingled more than ever, but many of the visitors weren't coming for a haircut. They came to offer a handshake, to share a story of their own, or to simply sit for a moment and soak in the atmosphere of a place that had refused to die. One Saturday, a group of my customers, led by the fire captain, showed up with paint cans and brushes and spent the entire day giving the shop a fresh coat of paint, carefully working around the old photographs. Maria from the bakery organized a collection, and a week later, a brand new, but still beautifully retro, barber chair was delivered to my doorstep. It was their way of saying thank you, of reinvesting in the place that had invested so much in them. Standing in my newly painted shop, the scent of fresh paint mingling with the timeless aroma of bay rum, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't realized I'd been missing. It was the quiet, solid peace of a life reclaimed. The sunlight streamed through the sparkling clean windows, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air, each one a tiny spark of a future I now fully controlled. The bell jingled, a crisp, cheerful sound. A young mother I didn't recognize stood in the doorway, holding the hand of a small, shy boy. "Is this the Gilded Shear?" she asked, a hopeful smile on her face. I heard. I heard this is the place to come for a first haircut. I smiled back, a genuine, unburdened smile. I picked up my gleaming shears, the metal cool and familiar in my hand. "It certainly is," I said. "Come on in, you're right on time. Thank you so much for listening to Vivian's story. If her journey of standing up for her dignity and legacy resonates with you, please consider following for more stories like this. Everyone has a line that can't be crossed, and we'd love to hear about your own moments of finding your voice in the comments below."